We will be learning now the Sicha, first Sicha, Pashas Beshalach, and Chelek Tezayin. I'm using from the project Likutei Sichos, the Lashon HaKodesh version of the Sicha. Originally, the Sicha was Muge in Yiddish, but they published the Sicha now in Lashon HaKodesh, so that's what we're going to be using for the Shir, the Lashon HaKodesh version of the Sicha. Ala pasuk vayikach sheish meis rechev bochur vegemer isa b'mechilta shabehemes shelokach para avu sheish meis rechev elu hayu min hamikne shehenis hayores dvar Hashem. The pasuk in this week's parsha, when the Mitzrim were chasing the Yidden, so the Mechilta says, where did these animals, these horses, come from that the Mitzrim used? Because by Makas devil, all the animals died. So the Mechilta says that they came from those Mikne, Shehenis Hayodes Dvar Hashem. And we learned in last week's Parsha that Hashem said he's only going to destroy those animals that were outdoors, but those that were indoors will survive. So Hayodes Dvar Hashem, Heinis as Mikneu, the one who feared Hashem, made sure to chase his animals indoors that they shouldn't die. So these animals were the ones who were used now. So that means that the Yored Dvar Hashem at this point was ready to give his animals to chase after the Yidden. Mikan hoyer Rab Shimon Eimer. So the Mechilta says that from here, Rab Shimon concludes, Toiv sheba goyim haroig, the best of the goyim you should kill, and Toiv sheba nechoshim retzeitzes moichi, and the best of the snakes, the best snake, you should crush its brains, literally, its skull, its head. So there's a famous question on this sentence, this statement of Rab Shimon. How is it possible that the Torah should instruct, Chazal should instruct Torah, that this is the Torah approach, that the Tov Shebagoyim, the best of the Goyim, should be killed? That is the opposite of justice and correct behavior. This is not proper. So that is a very basic question. This question has been raised many, many times, and various answers are given. Some of these answers will be mentioned further on in the Sicha. Why did this question come up so often? Because there were many debates that happened between Gdei Yisrael and our enemies, anti-Semites. Mivikuche Rabbi Yechiel mi Paris, starting already from the Vikuchim, the debates that were held between Rabbi Yechiel mi Paris, Migdele Baal HaTeisvus, who was one of the great Baal HaTeisvus, until in our recent history. So this question was raised in these debates many times, because these debates were often led by clergy people from Christian faith and others who were learned people, and they knew these Maimorei Chazal, so they brought this up. How can it say in your sources that one should kill the best of the Goyim? So the Gdei Yisrael were put in a position where they needed to address this question, and therefore they did, and they gave different answers to explain this statement of Rab Shimon. Rashi beperush al Torah amud al pasuk zeh. Rashi in this week's parsha, when it comes to the pasuk, vayikach sheish meis rechav bachur, so Rashi also is addressing this. It is also addressing this pasuk. Hetig min hakosov es hatevis v'chol rechav Mitzrayim. So Rashi quotes in the Dibur HaMaschil the words v'chol rechav Mitzrayim upirish kebemechilta. Rashi explains like the mechilta. Where did these behemoths come from? If you'll say that it came from Mitzrayim, it says that all Mikne Mitzrayim died. And if you'll say that these animals were taken from the Jews, meaning after Makas Dever, before the Yidden left Mitzrayim, maybe, perhaps, the Mitzrim confiscated animals from the Yidden. That's not possible, says Rashi. That Moshe Rabbeinu told Parei, all our Mikne will go along with us. Mishal Mihayu, so who were these from? Mihayoris Dvar Hashem. It came from the Mitzri, who was a Yored Dvar Hashem, and therefore he put his animals indoors, and therefore there were animals in Mitzrayim. So Rashi continues that from here Rav Shimon learned out and he derived that Kosher Shebe Mitzrayim Haroig Teiv Shabanachashim Retzeitzes Moichi. Basically, almost clear the quote from the Mechilta. So what is really not understood, while it is true that Rashi is something that also Gadol B'Yisrael, an adult, learns Rashi too. Every Yid learns Chumash and he learns Rashi. Shemitam ze Saka din benegel shnai mikro ve'echot targum Yerei Shammai mikro targum gam pirush Rashi, as the halach is stated in Shulchan Aruch, that when a Yid is maver sedre, the best way to do this, the Yerei Shamayim should not only do Shnayim Mikra and Echot Targum, but he should also learn Rashi. Because Rashi is such a basic thing that even an adult must learn Rashi. However, Hare Commission is back, Kwan is back, Pam Rabbis, we already have said many times, Pirush Rashi ala Chumash Masim Umuvin Gamla ben Chumash leMikra. It must also be fitting and understood also for a 5-year-old learning Chumash. And it has to be so straightforward and so clear that he can understand the Pashat Pshat Pasuk in Chumash. In the true way, without having to resort to explanations that are brought down in other Mefarshim. Rashi makes his Pirush in an accessible manner that a child learning Chumash can, from the Rashi's Pirush, straight understand the meaning of the Pasuk without needing any other Pirushim. He can find whatever is needed for the basic learning of Chumash. He can understand that from the simple Pirush in Rashi. Nothing is missing in Rashi, meaning there's nothing that the simple Pshat in Pasuk requires explanation and Rashi doesn't address it. And Rashi also doesn't give extra Pirushim just because they're nice Pirushim. He is only giving us what is needed for the basic understanding of Pasuk. This is true both for the understanding of the current Pasuk as well as in the context of comparing this Pasuk to previous Rashis that Rashi had taught the Ben Chamish earlier on. Al Pisa, based on all that, Kivin Shatmi Hanal. Oile Ga Afilu Belimut Shitri Beshal Ben Chamish. The question that we have raised over here, how is it correct? How is it proper? And how is it justice to make a statement that the best guy should be killed, this is such a basic, fundamental question that anyone who learns this right away asks this question. Even a superficial learning of a child that is 5 years old, he will also stop and say, what? How is that possible? How can you make such a statement? The best guy should be killed. Now, if that is so, and this is such a basic question, kosher, so it's difficult. How can Rashi bring this statement of Reb Shimon that the best guy should be killed without adding on any explanation of what this is meant, how this is meant to be understood? Rashi is not answering this blatant question. And really, there's even a greater question. Haben Chomish lomat kvami kodim, shekasher Avram Avinu hoya b'Mitzrayim, paroi heitiv imoi v'sholchem misham, mitoich kavona lahagen olav al sorim mikol ra. A child learning Chumash already learned in Pashas Lech Lecha that Avram Avinu was in Mitzrayim, and Paroi treated Avram very well and escorted him and sent him out of Mitzrayim because he wanted to protect Avram, protect Sarah from all bad. So the Ben Chumash Lemikra has met in Chumash by learning Chumash before Pashas Beshalach that there was a Paroi, a previous Paroi in Mitzrayim, who was a very honorable man, so to speak. He was a good guy. He helped and protected Avram and Sarah. He learned even more. Yaakov and his descendants came down to Mitzrayim. Paroi on his own offered, I would like to settle you in the best part of the land. And when the Eden actually settled in that place, as the Torah tells us, it was in a manner where they really settled there and they multiplied there, and so, very much so. So this was they lived a good life there. How can we say that you should kill the best Mitzri? There were some Mitzrim, at least, who treated the Yidden properly. They lived together in peace and tranquility. They treated them very well and nicely. Now this question will become an even sharper question. It will become an even more pressing question when the Ben Chomish will continue learning Chumash. And eventually he'll reach Pashas Kiseitze in Sefer Dvarim. The Torah commands us, don't despise the Mitzri. Hainu, sheyeshne isur afilu lesaif Mitzri. So there is an isur, not only a prohibition, not only not to kill a Mitzri. You're not even allowed to hate him or despise him. If you're not allowed to be Messiah a Mitzri, then you certainly are not allowed to kill him. More. If the best Mitzri we are supposed to kill, then how exactly can we then fulfill the next part of the pasuk, as Hemshech HaPasuk, over there in Parshas Kitzeitze, Shom, where it says, Al Tesayv Mitzri, then it says, Doir Shlishi Yovel Lohem Bikal Hashem. A third generation of a Geir Mitzri is allowed to marry in to the Jewish people. first a Mitzri who becomes a Ger cannot marry a Bas Yisrael, but a third generation of a Ger Mitzri can. Now, if we are meant to kill the best Mitzri, then how is that even possible? How can we ever get to a third generation Mitzri Ger marrying in Kal Hashem? While it is true that this individual, just the very fact that he wants to convert and become a Ger, tells us already that he obviously is one of the kosher shebemitzrim. Even about a kosher shebemitzrim, Rab Shimon apparently says, as soon as he comes to your door, you have to kill him. We're not talking about the technicality of it, but in concept, Rab Shimon says you got to kill him. So how can we even have the possibility of a Ger Mitzri to begin with? So perhaps in this pasuk, Rashi doesn't have to address this question. But when it comes to Pashas Kiseitze, where the Torah tells us about this Torah Shlishi, Yovel, and Bikal Hashem, over there Rashi should have addressed how that doesn't contradict what we learned in Pashas Beshalach in Rashi. Siv Gimel. Echad ha-tirutzim shemotzinu bekama v'kama sforim hu al pi ha'girsa b'mesechtes Seifrim. In Mesechtes Seifrim, there's a different version from the Mechilta. A different version than the Mechilta. Over there, it says like this. HaToiv shebe'akum b'shas milchomo haroik. The best guy in wartime, then you should kill him. During wartime, you should kill the best guy. B'shav hainu shaheter oyachiyuv. In other words, the heter, or perhaps even the obligation to kill even the best guy, that was said in a certain context, in the context of wartime. In a different situation, when there's no war going on, certainly when there's a time of peace, then of course we're not supposed to kill the best guy. That was only said for the specific time of war. So we might say, perhaps, that is also the pshat in Rashi. That when Rashi is telling us this quote from Rab Shimon, he's referring during a time of war, like the Mitzrim came to make war with the Yidden. When did this punishment of the Yored Dvar Hashem happen? It happened when the Mitzrim were chasing after the Jewish people, with the intent to wage war against the Yidden at the Yam Suf. So we could say that in that context, yeah, you got to kill even the best Mitzri. But truly, in truth, you cannot answer like that. The fact that Rashi is saying that from here, Rab Shimon derived that the best Mitzri you should kill. What does that mean, that from here we derive? It means we're not talking only about here in this instant, that the Mitzrim were chasing after the Yidden. We're talking that from this instant, we can derive the concept for, in general, for other times. Perusha Aleph, Shemikan, Lemedim Onu Lemakim Achadim. From here we'll apply it for elsewhere. And also base, Mikan. What does it mean, Mikan, from here? From here, from which pasuk? What does the pasuk say? Mivayikach rechev Mitzrayim. That he took the chariots of Mitzrayim. Mimaisa halekicho. From the fact that he took these animals, the fact that the best Mitzri still gave his animals to Paroi. Therefore, he's deserving of the punishment that Hashem brought during Kriyas Yamsuf, which is Haroig, kill him. In other words, so the punishment of death wasn't due to the fact that he made war against the Yidden. Rather, it's for the fact that he gave his animals to Paroi with bad intentions. In other words, we're talking before the actual war. Before they actually started that fight. So already the giving of the animals is already why they deserve the death penalty. Haroig. That already the taking of the animals with the intention to take them out to war, that already is nichlal begeder b'shas milchama, that is included in the general term wartime, and therefore maybe we can say that Rashi is also saying the statement with that qualification that it's only during wartime that you got to kill the best guy. Says the Rebbe, you still cannot say that that's what Rashi holds. Umitam ikri, and the reason why not is a very fundamental and basic one. Why? As we said before, Rashi calls it Perusha Gamavu Ben Chomish. We already established Rashi is saying whatever he's saying for a 5-year-old child learning Chumash. Velochein, and therefore kanal, as we said before. Kol pirush hanitzrach pshuta shel mikra kosvei Rashi be'efim poshudu boru. Any pirush that is needed for the simple understanding of the pasuk, Rashi will write it in a very clear and simple manner. Umimela, and therefore, if indeed Rashi's intention is that during wartime you should kill the Mitzri, even the best one, so Rashi would have written these words clearly. He would have spelled it out. Rashi wouldn't have relied that the Ben Chomesh is going to start searching and doing research. What does Rashi mean? How can you kill the best Mitzri? Until he'll come across a Masechta Seifrim, which is not common Sefer, and definitely not for a 5-year-old learning Chomesh, that in Masechta Seifrim, he will find the solution to this problem, that it over there's a gears of b'shas milchama, and therefore maybe Rashi also means b'shas milchama. Especially that according to this pshat, this is a fundamental qualification of the statement. It limits it to only shas milchama. So that's a major point. Rashi could have just written that out clearly, and he would have. with the mindset that he's going to explain this pasuk, even to a 5-year-old child, you can't leave such a statement vague. The best mitzvah you should kill, and the regular child will think, well, you have to kill even the best mitzvah. He won't think of it that this is during wartime specifically if Rashi doesn't spell it out. And for this last same reason, it is difficult to force into Rashi any of the other terutzim that are brought down in Sfarim to this major question. Ledugma, for example, there's a different answer. Aleph, shepirush klal zeh she'amar Reb Shimon, uloi sha'kosher shebemitzrayim roi lo einish haroig. That it doesn't mean literally that the best mitzri is deserving of death. Elo, rather, afilu ha'kosher shebemitzrim, hu kol zeh ha'omer haroig. This is one of the answers that were given in these debates that Gedolei Yisrael had. So when the question was raised, how dare you say that you have to kill the best non-Jew? So the answer was given, no, that's not what it says. It says you have to read that correctly. They answered that the best Mitzri has an attitude of killing the Mitzri, not that we have to kill the Mitzri. The Mitzri has an attitude of deciding and judging haroig very quickly. If a man who is suspected of having killed someone stands in judgment before a judge, so even a kosher Mitzri is ready to judge him and condemn him to death, haroig als mach umdino bilvad, just based on assessment and general, without a clear proof, without trying to find a way out. Maybe the guy didn't do it, maybe it wasn't his fault. He'll just very impulsively judge the man to death. By Bnei Yisrael, we have a whole system where the Beis Din has to interrogate the Eidim, and has to be there has to be a roiv that is a bigger roiv that is mechayev. You have to have witnesses. The guy had to be warned. And we have to try. There's a chiyuv to try to find him a merit why he is not chayiv misa. We don't rush to judgment so quickly. So that was one of the answers given in one of these debates. Or Beis, another answer, Shadvarim nemru b'derech guzma bilvad. Don't mean it. It's not meant literal. It's only a guzma. Sometimes we say a statement to bring out a point, so we exaggerate, but it doesn't mean it in a simple sense. Al derech hapirush behemshech mamar shel Rab Shimon. They brought proof for this position that this is not meant literal from the continuation of what Rab Shimon taught. This was also brought up in the debates. They told the whoever asked the question that in Masechta Seifrim, if you look, you have to look the context, and there's more to what Rab Shimon said. It says over there, that the most kosher woman is a balas kshofim, does magic, black magic, whatever. Now, when we say such a statement, does that mean literal? Obviously, chas v'sholem, to say that a Jewish woman, it says, So in other words, we're talking even about a Jewish woman, a Bas Sarah Rivka Rachel Veleah, and the Ksheira of them, the best of them, is Balas Kshafim. That can't be. We can't say that literal, that every Ksheira Shabanoshim is a Balas Kshafim. Rather, it is clear that this was said in an exaggerated manner. To stress the point how careful one has to be about these inyanim of kshafim, that even a ksheira shebanoshim, someone who seems to be very upright, might even be a balas kshafim. So to make the point, so it is expressed in this extreme manner. So they said that's the explanation also for this. Of course, it doesn't mean literally that the best Mitzri you should kill. This is just an exaggerated way of saying very strongly, you can't just trust them so blindly. You have to know that even someone who seems to be a very good guy, you never know. So don't be too trusting of them. Gimel, another answer. At the time of Rab Shimon, the Yidden suffered many tzoros and gzeres. And about these goyim in his lifetime, Rab Shimon meant that even the best of them you should kill. Because these goyim have already a record. They have shown and proven themselves. They showed outright animosity against the Jewish people. But dugmas hanochosh, just like the snake, which is mentioned right after that in Rab Shimon's word, the snake is full of poison. So these goyim, they are full of poison against the Jewish people. So because they have already a record of being great anti-Semites, so that's in that context, Rab Shimon said what he said. He's not talking about goyim in general, not even about the Mitzrim. Proof for that, the best proof is that there are numerous Maimore Razal which stress that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had Rachmanis even on the Mitzrim. Ubifrat boilet hadover b'tamatzivu l'sesayif Mitzri. When the pasuk says that you should not despise a Mitzri, why? The Torah gives the reason. Ki ger hayisa be'artzai. Because you were a foreigner in his land, you dwelled in his land. In other words, as Rashi explains it, that it was an achsanya for you, b'shas chak. Correct, it wasn't the best place to be, but b'peil mamish, it gave the Yidden a place to dwell. So, therefore, leisa saif mitzri. In other words, we're saying there are some good qualities. This is not a all-encompassing statement. So we have here numerous answers which were used in the debates. Says the Rebbe, none of these can explain Rashi. Perushim elu echol kayetzu b'hem koshel ha'amisam bepirush Rashi. Any of these perushim, and likewise other perushim which were said over the generations, it's very difficult to force them into pirush Rashi. The kiven she'ein hem oilim minash mashmos hapshuta shel halosh shemevi Rashi kosher shemitzim hareig. Considering the fact that the simple reading of these words, kosher shemitzim hareig, does not imply any of these perushim, it rather it's something that you need to explain to someone. So Rashi had to, if that's what he meant, he had to add on some words of explanation to explain that that is his intention when he brings this statement. And considering the fact that Rashi did not, rather, he just copied a few words as it is in the Mechilta. So we are compelled to conclude that somehow in the words of Rav Shimon themselves, there is an explanation. And it has to be so obvious that Rashi doesn't have to add any words to respond to that question. Even for a 5-year-old child, Rashi does not need to add anything. So now in Sifei, the Rebbe is going to take it the other way. We don't know yet how for Rashi this is so simple that he doesn't have to. But obviously there is some way how we can explain Rashi in a simple manner. Whatever that might be, and we're going to see soon what it is, but whatever that might be, at this point, raises a different question for us. If there is such a simple way to explain it, how come none of these vikuchim in any of these debates, how come they didn't say what we're going to say now, somehow pshat in Rashi? Let's read that in Sifei. From this, we come now to the greatest wonder in this whole saga. Let's say that we figure out some way how we can explain Rashi from all sides. We'll explain somehow how this statement is very clearly understood. It's all good. In the manner of lechatchila, simply be'ene ben chomish, in the eyes of a 5-year-old. So the question then comes the other way around. How come that during many generations, the Gdolei Yisrael had to toil and figure out how to answer this question? And somehow they didn't come up with this simple explanation that apparently Rashi had for the child. The pshit she'ein hakavana kan letaretz et shelos shel ben chomesh be'ezbel lefi asagosoi. Rashi definitely doesn't mean that there is somehow an explanation that can only work for a 5-year-old child, but you can't really tell this to an adult. In other words, that there is some type of answer that will placate the child, but is not really an accurate and true answer. The true answer, Rashi, so to speak, would rely that the child will grow up. Eventually, he'll learn it in Sfarim what the other answers are. But that right now, Rashi's relying that the Ben Chomesh is going to live in peace with this statement due to some simple answer, although it might not be the true answer. Says the Rebbe, that can't be. It is unacceptable to say that Rashi is learning with Ben Chomesh something which is not really the truth. Definitely Rashi is relying on some reason that is, on the one hand, so simple, but also a true answer. And yet it is so simple that Rashi does not even have to add any words to the Mechilta. Even for the 5-year-old child, when we call Makim, and still, on the other hand, still for some reason, none of these vikuchim, none of these debates got that answer. Whatever Rashi's answer is, we don't see that they came up with it. Because as we elaborated before, the different answers, we can't learn pshat in Rashi like that. Because if that's what Rashi meant, How would the Ben Chomish ever think of that? That it's only B'Shas Milchama, or that it's talking about certain goyim who have a record of great animosity to Bnei Yisrael, or other answers that we have brought that it means B'derech Guzma, it doesn't mean literal, or that that the Mitzrim are saying Haroig. These are somewhat far-fetched, or even if you're going to say that these are good answers, but there's no way that the Ben Chomish can get those answers just from reading what Rashi wrote. So if Rashi meant those, Rashi would have had to add some other words. Sivov, Gam tzarich lahavin Pirush Rashi eino sefer shel piske halachas. We know Rashi's sefer is not here to pasken dinim, elobir pshat haksuvim. Rather, it's a sefer that is meant to explain the pshat. Im kein madua nochutz letzerich pirush haksuvim lahavis divra mechilte mikan hoyer Rab Shimon v'chulu. Why bechlal does Rashi need to bring this whole thing into the Rashi? What was the original question in this Rashi? Where did the animals come from? So Rashi has to answer where the animals come from. It's just a technicality. The Ben Chomish Lemikra might wonder, where did the animals come from? He knows there was a Makas Dever which wiped out all the animals. So where did these animals come from? So Rashi tells you, remember by Makas Dever, Hashem said that whoever is Yored Var Hashem and puts the animals indoors, nothing will happen to those animals. Those are the animals. The ones that the Yored Var Hashem put in their indoors. That's all. So now we have an answer to our question where the animal came from. Rashi could have ended right there. Why does Rashi have to then go on? From this, Rab Shimon learned out. Why is that necessary for Pshuta Shel Mikra? We need to understand Pshat in Pasuk. Rashi is not compiling nice midrashim and nice things that he found in Medrash or in Mechilta or in wherever. So why is Rashi adding on these words? Beis. Even if you want to tell me that for some reason Rashi feels it necessary to teach us here that one should not trust a guy, even if he's a Yored Var Hashem. Why would Rashi need that? Because he needs to answer a certain question. What's the question? After Rashi told us that the animals came from the Yored Var Hashem, so the Ben Chomish might think, what? An individual who is a Yored Var Hashem, such an individual who was afraid and believed in Hashem and therefore put his animals indoors. How is it possible that such a guy should put his animals to use to chase and fight the Yidden? And therefore Rashi has to continue with the statement, that yes, indeed, Rashi is telling the Ben Chomish Lemikra, don't find that so strange. You should know. Even Teiv Sheba Mitzrim Haroig, you can't trust even the best guy. You never know. Adayin ein mechuver, this still leaves too much clouded and unclear. Madua negea linyonenu gam sium hamaymer hanal sherohu leoinish haroig. Still, Rashi could have made that point in a less extreme way. He doesn't have to say that even the best guy, even the best mitzri, haroig, kill him. Could have just said, yeah, you never know, you can't trust. That's all. Gimel lechayre lehemshech v'siyum hamaymer tev shebenachoshem retzeitzes moichei ein kol shaychus lepirush hapasuk. When it comes to the next part, where it concludes that the best snake, you should crush its moyach, its brains. What does that have to do with the pirush of the pasuk? Dalet, madua yesh tzerich lilmid mikan shetev shebenachoshem retzeitzes moichei. What does it mean that Rab Shimon learned this out from here? From here, we learn out that the best snake you should crush its moyach. There is a clear pasuk where it says in Parshas Vayechi, ve'eva oshis, not in Parshas Vayechi, I'm sorry, in Parshas Bereshis, by after the Chet Eitzadas, Hashem said, ve'eva oshis beincha ve'gomer, that I'm going to establish hatred between the human beings and the snake, hu yeshuv chorosh, and the human will crush your head, will step on your head. That's what Hashem told the Nachash in the beginning of the Bria, as is recorded already in Parshas Bereshis. So what does it mean? From here, Rab Shimon derived two things. He derived Tov shebemitzrim haroig, but he also apparently derived Tov shebenachashim retzeitzes moichei. But Tov shebenachashim retzeitzes moichei, we don't learn this out from here. We know this already since Parshas Bereshis. Other things that we need to figure out here. Aleph, for what purpose does Rashi tell us who said it? We know there's a rule. Every Rashi comes from some every Rashi, but many Rashis you will find, you can trace the sources to other Maimorei Chazal. But usually, in the vast majority of them, Rashi does not say who is the Tana or the Amoira who said it. So that tells us that Rashi's approach is not to quote the Baal HaMemre. When he does, there is a special reason for it. And that reason has to be in the context of Pshuta Shel Mikra. It must add on somehow something additional explanation to the beer. So the question is, here where Rashi does quote Rab Shimon by name, what is it that Rashi wants to add on with that? Base. When he talks about the Mitzri, he says, the best Mitzri, haroig, kill him. When it comes to the best snake, it doesn't say haroig, it says ritzoitz es moichei, crush his brain. Gimel, l'chayre behemshel l'loshn ritzoitz, Rashi tzarich leimar ritzoitz es roishei. After using the term ritzoitz, Rashi should have said, crush what? His head, his roish. Behesem l'loshn ha'kosuv, hu yeshuv chorosh, like it says in the pasuk that we quoted from Bereshis, that he will step on your head. And also in Tilim it says, ritzatzto roshei levyoson. So we see that ritzoitz is followed with roish. So how come it says ritzoitz es moichoi and not ritzoitz es roishoi? Dalet. What does it mean from here? The wording mikan implies to exclude someplace else. Don't think that you can learn this from elsewhere. You have to learn it from mikan, from here. What is the other place where we might have derived this from that Rashi has to stress that it's from here and not from there? Ches. To explain this entire thing, there is a more general question that when we learn this Rashi, there's a general question that comes up. We quoted this earlier in the Sicha, that in Masechta Seifrim, he actually qualifies the statement of Rab Shimon to B'shas Milchama. He limits it to B'shas Milchama. Now, l'chayra, this girse, B'shas Milchama, you should kill Hatoiv Shebakum. Hoylem es gam es Pshuta Shel Mikra. Really, this fits very well with the simple pshat of the pasuk due to the storyline. What happened here? The context of this pasuk is the Mitzrim came to wage war against the Yidden. And Hashem punished them also by making war against them. As it says in pasuk, Hashem yilochem lochem v'gemer. Hashem nilcham lochem v'gemer. So we see that term milchama is being used over here. So if so, harigam ben chomish maybe even a child can understand. Shebe'ez milchama im oyev iyaf shalahafri desaksheri mashabetzache keneged v'shas hamilchama atzma. A child even understands. During wartime, you can't start picking out who is the good guy, who is the bad guy. You can never be 100% sure, and you might get killed in the process. This type of warfare that the Israeli army has invented, that you go into a place and you start going from house to house and picking out, that costs lives of Jewish soldiers, and it's Hepech HaHalach and Hepech HaTorah. And it's also Hepech common sense. The enemy is hiding behind civilians. That's very sad and so on, but we can't start saying this one is a good guy, this one a bad guy. Even a child understands. You have an army coming against you, you have to shoot them. Even if there's among them Toiv Shebemitzrim. So this is something that anyone can understand. So if this is such a simple concept, Im Kain hade Adarabe nimtza shegirso zu mechuveres yeser min agirso shevi Rashi min amechilta. So when Rashi has one version in the Mechilta where it just says Tev shebemitzrim haroig, then he has another version in Masechtas Seifrim where it says Tev shebe'akum b'shas milchoma haroig. So l'chayra, this girsa of the Masechtas Seifrim fits so much better than the girsa that Rashi brings min Mechilta. Shebo nema stam kosher shmitzim haroig v'hainu aleph b'chol esu b'chol matziv. From the Mechilta, it seems that this is not limited to wartime, but any time and in any situation. Shezeu hepech hatzedek v'hayesh legamre, something which is totally against any sense of justice and proper behavior. Beis hadova madgish shayores dvar Hashem is chayev misa rak mipnei shenosach bein meisav lepari kanal siv gimel, and also the fact that we don't say that this is b'shas milchama stresses that they were punished with the death penalty just for giving the animals, which is really a difficult concept. So how come Rashi picks the girsa of the Mechilta and not the girsa of the Masechtas Seifrim? Elo shebe'emes ein zu kushya klal. The truth is that this is not a question, because b'derech hapshat movin shanes the kriyas yamsu v'kiloi na mitzim haroikvim lo ira rak mipnei shamitzim rot v'achre bnei Yisrael nichu b'hem. We have to remember, we are dealing here with Pshuta Shal Mikra. When we read the Psukim, why were the Mitzrim drowned by Kriyas Yamsuf? If you learn the Psukim correctly, and the Ben Chomish that Rashi is talking to is learning the Psukim correctly, Kriyas Yamsuf and the ensuing death of all the Mitzrim at Kriyas Yamsuf was not punishment for their chasing after the Yidden and the war that they wage against the Yidden at Yamsuf. It's not for that. What does it say before? That Hashem told Moshe, I will strengthen Paro's heart, I will harden his heart so that he should chase after you. And the next pasuk it says, Hashem strengthened Paro's heart and made him chase. So the fact that the chasing came due to Hashem's intervention over here, so you can't punish the Mitzvah for chasing the Yidden. Hashem made that happen. So why were they punished? Not for the chasing. This was a continuation to all the previous makis that Hashem brought upon Mitzrayim. Al kach she'inu es bnei Yisrael v'shibdu eisem b'meshech shalom rabis kol kach, for their enslaving the Jewish peoples and afflicting them with pain for so many, many years. For that, they were punished. And as a conclusion of all the makkahs, Hashem brought upon them the biggest punishment, Nes Kriyas Yamsuf, the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf, which made sure that none remained. They all got wiped out by Kriyas Yamsuf. So this was just the conclusion of the general makkahs of all the previous makkahs. So that is the simple understanding when we learn the psukim correctly, that this punishment was not for just the chasing now before Kriyas Yamsuf, but it was for the entire enslavement of the Yidden. That's why Rashi can't bring the gears of Masechta Seifrim, that only during wartime they are deserving of the death penalty. Because the pasuk is not telling us that their chasing and the war of the Mitzrim was the cause for their death. So the Masechta Seifrim approach, as Rashi takes it, is not fitting in the Pshuta Shel Mikra. So when Rashi doesn't bring it, it's not just he doesn't bring it, because it doesn't fit in the pasuk Bechlal. Ulefize, based on that, Siftes lefize moving atam shehuchach Rashi lahavis hamshech hamaymer mikan hoy Rav Shimon Eimer v'chulu. Because of that, because it can't mean b'shas milchama that they were punished for that milchama, but that they were punished for what happened before. That's what Rashi needs to. We had asked before, why, if the question is just a technical question, where did the animals come from? Rashi could have said they came from the Yored Var Hashem, finish the Rashi right there and then. No, there's something else that is difficult here, because, as we just explained, that the reason that these Mitzrim were killed by Yamsuf is not for the redifa, for the chasing, but it is for before the whole Shibud Mitzrayim. If that is so, we have an issue. And that issue, Rashi is going to address with bringing the Maimer Mikanoy Rab Shimon Eimer, Hagam She'em Pirush Rashi Sefer Lochs, although Rashi is not coming to give us instructions, because it's like this. Midivre Rashi Shayoret Var Hashem Nosnu Be'Meiseim Lepare. The fact that Rashi tells us that the Yored Var Hashem, these Mitzrim who were God-fearing, and they gave their behemoths to Pare, moving Shegam Heim Hoyu B'Kriyas Yamsuf. That means that these Mitzrim who gave these animals, they themselves were also by Kriyas Yamsuf. How do we know that they were also by Kriyas Yamsuf? In the footnote, the Rebbe elaborates about this. And actually, the Rebbe spoke to Sicha on Purim. The Rebbe spoke about this at length to explain this point. Here it's in the footnote 42, where Rashi says, where it says on the pasuk that he lokach imoy, says Rashi moshchom bidvorim, that Paroi drew the Mitzrim with words. Now, although when we're talking about taking the rechev, taking the animals, you don't need to say moshchom bidvorim. You could say literally, he just took them. To people, you have to draw them with words. You don't just take them with your hands. So it is implied here clearly that it's not just that they gave their behemoths, but that they also joined Pare in the chase. As Rashi explains previously, that Pare told them, you don't mind, they took all your money, you gave them your belongings, clothing, and gold and silver, and they came to borrow. They're not giving you anything back. So, and with that argument, he got them to join. So apparently, they didn't just give the behemoths; they themselves joined. So if so, mimele shegam heim nanchu yachadim shara mitzrim. So if they were there, and it says that all those that were there were killed in the Yamsuf, so these individuals were also killed along with all the other Mitzrim who were there. So now Rashi has a dilemma. If we said, like we said before, that all the Mitzrim got wiped out by Kriyas Yamsuf, not for the Redifa, for the chase, but for what they did beforehand already in Mitzrayim. So 1 second, beforehand in Mitzrayim, the Yored Var Hashem, why is the Yored Var Hashem wiped out equally alongside the others, Le'elu Shaloi Hayu Yoreh, alongside those who were not God-fearing? It says none survived. Just because at this point he gave the behemoths to Parai, that's why he should deserve the death penalty. These were good goyim, apparently. These were the Yored Var Hashem Mitzrim. If he would have said that they were killed due to their chasing after the Yidden with the intention to make Mulchama, then we could have understood the reason why they were punished by death. And then indeed Rashi wouldn't have had to explain it, because like we said before, during war times, we can't start making differences. But because, as we have established, that the Redifa is not the reason why they got killed, because the Redifa was orchestrated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They had no free will anymore at that point. They had to do the Redifa. So therefore, that can't be the cause for their punishment. If so, how come that the punishment was applied also to those that were God-fearing? Ubifrat especially. Shaben chomish kvar lomad bepashis dem v'ameira sheilu hoyu shamrak tisha asara tzadikim. The Ben Chomish remembers the Vastem and Ameira, if there would have been 9, 10 tzadikim, leizu bilvat shoyu nitzelim be'atzmam, elo sheschusam hoyse megino gam al kol adorim be'irom. Not only that they would have been saved, their schus would have protected all those who live in their city. The Rebbe says 9, 10, 9 in parentheses and 10, because over there, Avram tried to plead with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that Hashem should be with the minion, so to speak. So then it would be really 9, but in total, it's like we need 10 tzaddikim, right, to save the city. But if there would have been 10 tzaddikim, it's not only that they themselves would have been saved, they would have protected the entire city. And what occurred here is the very opposite. Not only that the Yored Var Hashem didn't protect the other Mitzrim from being destroyed, even they themselves were not saved. How is that possible? That is a dilemma that Rashi needs to address. For this dilemma, Rashi needs to bring us the statement of Rab Shimon, Mikan v'chulu, Mikan Rab Shimon name the what the kosher shebemitzrim haroik tev shemenachos v'chulu. Levair, to explain. She'oin shel hayore lo yhoya rak mipnei shenosnos memeisav lepare. Rab Shimon is trying to explain to us the punishment that they got, that they were also killed alongside the rest of the Mitzrim, wasn't just because he gave the behemoths to Pare. Rather, this harsh punishment is proof שנסיnas הבהמס hoiso titzo shel sin ose lebnei Yisrael hashava lesin osum shel shara mitzrim. That tells us the fact that Hashem killed those mitzrim that were Yored Var Hashem and therefore put their animals indoors. The fact that now they gave the behemoths, this doesn't happen just in a vacuum. They gave the behemoths because they had a deep-seated hatred, just like all the other mitzrim, to the Yidden. Oiso sino arsis, the same poisonous hatred. Bedugmas hanochosh, poisonous like the snake that Rashi mentions afterwards. Shevios kol hamitzrim la'anis es bnei Yisrael, the same poisonous hatred that all the mitzrim had to bring this enslavement on the Bnei Yisrael, for many, many years with such might and such force, and therefore all of them got the same punishment. Because this Mitzri who gave the behemoths now, although he was Yored Var Hashem and put the behemoths indoors, but the fact that he gave the behemoths, at this point, we're talking at the very end, Mitzrayim is destroyed already. And still they gave the behemoths to Paroi. That means that they also shared the same hatred like all the other Mitzrim. So they all got the same punishment, just like the rest of the Mitzrim. Sif Yud. That also explains why Rashi stresses, or the Mechilta also stresses, but Rashi we're talking about specifically, that from here Rab Shimon derived the kosher b'mitzim hareik. Kiven she'ad einish kriyas yamsuf, adayin ein hechocha bruro, shegam etzel hayoretz var Hashem, hois hasinu varishus, klape b'nei Yisrael, b'mido gdelo kol kach. Until the punishment of kriyas yamsuf, we had no clear proof that also the Yored Var Hashem had this hatred and this evil nature towards Yidden with such a passion that for that he should be deserving of the death penalty, just like all the Mitzrim. We didn't know this until this story, until the Einish of Kriyas Yamsuf. There is no way that we could have known that. You can't argue, you know what? Of course we know that. We know already beforehand. We don't find anywhere, except for Dever and Borod, that the Yored Var Hashem somehow got a different treatment than the rest of the Mitzrim. Dom, Tzfardei, Akinim, all the Mitzrim suffered from it. Apparently also the Yored Var Hashem. Doesn't say that there's a difference. So apparently all of them already show us that they shared in their animosity towards Bnei Yisrael. Says the Rebbe, no, that's not a good argument. That doesn't prove that they had the same level of hatred. Why not? Because all these makis did not entail death, which is the ultimate punishment, which is the greatest punishment. So to deserve the makkah of dam, tzvadeya, and all these makkahs, one didn't need to have the full measure of rishus. If they had even a lesser degree of animosity than some of the other mitzvim, they would have still been deserving to suffer somewhat. It is appropriate for them to get this punishment even for a smaller measurement of hatred and rishus. Some measurement of rishus, certainly the Yored Var Hashem also had. So we can't know for sure that they share the same level of hatred. And therefore they also got those makas. That's what we could have thought. Even makas becheres, makas becheres already was death. Rashi already explained that why did the becherim die? That over there it says that even the sons, the becherim of the maidservants also were punished. Says Rashi, because they also used the Yidden, enslaved the Yidden, like would work the Yidden, and they were also happy that the Yidden are suffering. The fact that it didn't come to all the members of the family, only to some members of the family, the firstborns. Apparently, the fact that it was a limited punishment of death and not for everyone means that for that also you don't necessarily need to have the ultimate rishus, the ultimate hatred. Definitely the Bnei Ashfachis did not have the same level of hatred like the Mitzrim, but still they got killed because they shared. So apparently for Makat B'cheres also you don't need to have the highest measure of hatred. But Dafke Mikan, but only from here, Min Hanes the Kriyas Yamsuf, Sheboy Kiloyin HaMitzrim Hoye Be'ofen Shalenisha B'hem Ad Echod, Dafke at this point, where Kriyas Yamsuf wiped out the Mitzrim totally, that not even one remained alive. Yeshraye, from here we have proof, Shigama Yodes Var Hashem, Kosher Shebemitzrim in Aderahu of that generation, Hoye B'shovim Mamish L'chol Shar HaMitzrim, Begedel Sinasa Verishuse Klapim Bnei Yisrael, was equal to all other Mitzrim in the great hatred and rishus towards the Yidden, and therefore he was equally treated with the death penalty like the others. Based on this, we can also understand the rule, the general rule, that the best of the Mitzrim you should kill. The fact that Rashi is just addressing a question in how to learn Pshat in this pasuk. So, according to Rashi, it is self-understood that this Rashi and this statement applies specifically to the Mitzrim of that generation, about whom the pasuk is talking about. Those Mitzrim, even the kosher, even the one who is Yored V'Hashem, and they're still deserving of the death penalty. Umitamanal, for the reason that we spoke about before. You're talking about Mitzrim of a different generation. It's both the Ksherim and even the Reshoim. Rashi is not addressing them. Rashi is not talking about Mitzrim 100 years later. He's talking specifically about the Mitzrim during the time of the Exodus, during the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. One moment. So that understanding already answers the bulk of our questions on Rashi. The main question that we had was, how can Rashi make such a statement without explaining how that is right? How is that just? Of course it's just. We're talking about the Mitzrim of that generation specifically. Still the Ben Chomesh is asking, Min haloshen mikan hoye Rab Shimon Eimer. We mentioned that earlier in the Sicha. The wording that from here Rab Shimon learned, Mashma she'inin ze negea gam lemokim acher. That implies that it's not just here, but it's from here we take it to elsewhere, which is l'deres shalacham ikein, for future generations. Ulemay nafkemina l'deres acherim ze shekosher shebemitzrim b'deir ahu haroig. What nafkemina can there be for future generations from the fact that the mitzrim of that generation, even the best one, should be killed? So therefore Rashi continues on, which we have asked, why does Rashi need to bring that? It's coming to teach us for the rule that even the best of the snakes, you should crush its moyach. So yes, for the mitzrim, that we don't have later on. That was something unique about that generation, that even the Yared Var Hashem was a kosher shebemitzrim, so to speak, because he shared the same hatred, and that's what drove him. So he was lumped together with the rest of Mitzrayim and got killed by Kriyas Yamsuf. But the application of it for future generations is in a different field, not about killing the Mitzrim, but about killing a snake, that even the best snake retzetzes moiche. To add on more to that, mi'inyan zeh, mikan yodim onugam, she'im yokum ba'osit, mi she'yeh muchzik b'yachse l'rol b'nei Yisrael, at she'niten yeh likreise nochosh. It also comes to teach us, even for people, that if in the future there would be someone who has a record of animosity and bad behavior towards Yidden, to the degree that he can be classified a nochosh, al derech shemotzinu lemal yusa sheshimshon ikra nochosh, we find in the positive that Shimshon HaGibor was called a nochosh, right? So there can be also in the opposite, someone who is so evil that we can call him a snake. If there will be such a person, yochul olav haklal tev shebenochoshim v'chulu, that even the best of the nochosh type you should kill. Ulahoir, and the Rebbe says as a side point, should be mei Rashi v'talmidov. In the time of Rashi and his students, there were many who had this poisonous, deep-seated animosity towards Yidden. As is evident from the various kinos that were written by Rashi and his Talmidim. There were the Crusaders during the time of Rashi, and we see this reflected in the kinos, how they speak about these type of goyim, this poisonous hatred that they had towards the Yidden, which makes them like a snake. And you see in the footnotes 56, we see in Keles Yaakov, it talks about Haman. So it says Haman Misherish Nochosh Yotzo Tzefa, that from the Sherish of Nochosh came out Tzefa, which is also a type of snake. Amalek Alkein Haman Rashetevis who Misherish Nochosh. That the word Haman, the name Haman is a Rashetevis who Misherish Nochosh. He comes from the root of the Nochosh. So, if there's a Haman type of guy, even a Tov Sheba Nochosh, even if the best of these type of guys should be killed. And the Rebbe doesn't say it in the Sicha, but we can probably say also in more recent history, the Nazis, Yemach Shemam, even the best one, but if they had this type of poisonous animosity to Bnei Yisrael, they deserve the death. We ask, what does it mean that from here we derive that the best snake you should crush its head, its mayach? It says already in the pasuk hu yishuv charesh much earlier. The difference is like this. Okay. When it says in Pasuk, that Hashem is talking to the snake, that he, the human being, will step on your head and you will kill him from this heel, meaning that the snake can bite the heel of a person. From here we only learn that if you are going to try to kill him by biting him at his heel, he will step on your head. It just means that at that time, at that point, you should kill the snake. When there is a situation where the snake is trying to kill the human being will step on his head and kill the snake. So Rav Shimon is mechadish. Then not only then, we find that you should kill even the best Mitzri due to their poisonous hatred towards Bnei Yisrael, not due to their making war against the Yidden, just due to their animosity. So the same will be true about the Nachash. Hashem was geyser that there should be hatred between the human beings and the snake. Don't wait till the snake tries to attack the person and then step on his head. As soon as you spot the snake, you see it, right away crush his brain. Even if right now he's the best snake and he's not trying to attack, you still, similar to the best Mitzrim, he's a he's a dangerous enemy, a dangerous hater. It teaches, and it teaches also backwards, the other way around. From the fact that Rashi brings the conclusion of the words of Rav Shimon, that the best snake you should crush its brain, that also clarifies the first part. It's talking specifically about that generation. Their hatred to the Yidden was on similar terms and similar levels like the hatred of the Nachash to the Adam. It was in their genes, in their blood. Why indeed? How come that generation of Mitzrim had this out of this world type of sinna, totally unusual? We are asked, why not the Retzeitzes Roishe? Rashi brings from the Mechilta Dafke the Lashon Retzeitzes Moichei. That will answer that question. How come they had this infinite hatred to the Yidden? Just like we said before, it's coming to teach, but really it also teaches us about it itself. What brought about in Pashas Bereshis that hatred between the human being and the snake? The fact that Hanochash Haya Orum, the Nochash was sly, which is Moiche, that is something that has to do with his brain. Due to that Orum, that Armumius, that tricking, conniving nature, that brain of the snake, brought about the Chet Eitz Hadas. Kach gam lesinas hamitzrim hoyso siba miyuchedes. With that, Rashi is telling us, alluding to the fact that the hatred that the Yidden that the Mitzrim had towards the Yidden, they had a specific reason. And that reason made it totally different from any other generation. How did it all start? Pare said, let's outsmart them. He said this to all the Mitzrim, that we should collectively, let us collectively outsmart the Jews. This slide, this nischakmo, brought about the difficult enslavement. And Rashi alludes to that by using the term moichei instead of reishei. Why do you have to kill the Nachash? Because of the brain, which caused this. Same thing is true about this rule that the kosher shebemitzrim you should kill, because it's that is what led to the entire Kesha Shibut. But that raises a whole new question. Where do we find, from where do we know this, that the killing of the kosher shbemitzrim was due to their animosity, their animosity? Perhaps this was just a gzera from Hashem without any open reason, that the point has come where we're going to just wipe out all the mitzvah. Who says it was because they shared the animosity to the same degree and with the same infinite hatred, just like the rest of Mitzrayim? How do we know that? Where do we know that from? To answer this, Rashi tells us the Baal HaMemre is Rab Shimon. Why? We know that Chazal tell us, the Gemara says, that Rab Shimon would always find the reason for the pasuk. That was his style of learning Torah. Dorish Taime Dikra, he would always say, yeah, it's not just the Torah is telling us. There's a reason for it. And he would always give us the reason. So because of that, also here, we, according to Rab Shimon's approach, and that's why Rashi brings the name Rab Shimon in this context to allude to this, that there has to be a reason why they got killed. And it wasn't just as Gzeira Milafanai, and that's it, Hashem decided to kill out all the Mitzrim. So if we know that there has to be a time of Dikra, so we have to use our Seichel. What could be the reason? It can't just be the fact that they gave the behemoths. And we also established that it can't be the fact that they chased after the Eden, because that Hashem orchestrated that. So we have to realize that the fact that they gave the behemoths is not just random, it is because they really, really shared the same level of hatred that caused the other Mitzrim to enslave the Eden. They had the same hatred, and that's why they got it. Well, if he's there, if he's moving at time, remember, we asked in the beginning of the question of the Sicha that if Rashi has some type of an explanation that is so simple that Rashi even doesn't have to spell it out clearly, how come that by all the debates didn't they make use of this simple explanation? So the Rebbe explains, while it is true that this above explanation is a simple explanation, but it only fits Rashi for two reasons. Aleph, Rashi Bola Farish, Rak Pshuta Shamikra, Hainu Rak is Haposuk Shebei Koi. Rashi is in the context of explaining the Posuk. So Rashi is indeed saying that it's talking about the Mitzrim which are mentioned in this Posuk. So he can say that. And also based, Bepirush Rashi Muva Tevshim and Choshim Retzetzes Moichei. Rashi also brings the statement that the best snake you should crush its moya. And he brings it together because also this is learned out and derived from here. So that is an added proof that the kosher b'mitzrim hareg in Rashi is only referring specifically to the mitzrim in that generation. But the Vikuchim, they didn't ask, why does Rashi say this? In the Vikuchim, they were referring to the Mechilta. The Mechilta is saying it as a general thing, not just about the mitzvah of that generation. Masha Enking Shanidin Humayim Rab Shimon, Kefi Shahuva. But if the topic in discussion is, as the words of Rab Shimon are brought in Mesechtes Seifrim, Shanusach or the like, Shanusach who besignen stomi. Over there, it's a more generic wording. Tani Rab Shvi, Rab Shimon ben Yochai taught, Hatev shebe'akum harev, Hatev shebenachashim retzetzes meichei, Hakshere b'shen noshim balas kshafim. In making these statements, that the best guy you should kill, the best snake you should crush its skull, the best woman has kshafim. So you can't say it's talking about the mitzrim in the time of Yitzias Mitzrayim. If shalavar can, you can't talk about it like that. Kiven she'ein meduber kan b'der mesuyim besug mesuyim shel goyim mitzrayim. It's not talking about a certain type of goy or a certain type of mitzri or a certain generation. V'oid, and also kiven shekamim sechtes seifim kiyetz b'zeh neis b'mayim b'zeh chelek shlishi hakshere shebenoshim balas kshofim she'ein shaykh klal hatev sheba'akum. The fact that he adds on a third part, which has nothing to do with the best of the goyim. Tzorich lei ma shekol echad b'shleish tachalokim hu inen nifra b'fnei atzmei. The hatred of the goy and the nochash, you can somehow compare these two concepts, but you can't compare the ksheira shebenoshim to those. So if there is also that statement, that means that each one is its own thing. Each is its own statement. So this is a statement that talks about the nature of women. The statement, the best of the nechashim, has to do something about snakes. Just like the statement about the women and just like the statement about the snakes is not talking about a specific generation. So from the perspective of the Divres Mesechtes Seifrim and the like, and other places where this Ma'amar Chazal is mentioned, it means a more generic, and for Goyim in general, what is their nature? And that's what it's talking about. So therefore, the Gdei Yisrael had to come up with other answers. They couldn't have said, it's talking only about the Goyim in Mitzrayim during Yetzias Mitzrayim. That you can say in Rashi, because Rashi is explaining the pshat in the story and the pshat in the Chumash. But by the Vikuchim, they couldn't have said that. It was explained already numerous times that from Rashi, we can sometimes derive also some things in halacha. In our case. Das Rabbi Eliezer b'Mesechtes Sanhedrin hi shezev v'chulu v'hanochosh kol hakedim lohergun zocha. Mesechtes Sanhedrin, Rabbi Eliezer says that a snake, whoever kills the snake first, gets a schus. You don't have to bring the snake to Bezdin to kill it, as the Tanakama in the Mishnah over there holds. Now, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish argue about the position of Rabbi Eliezer. Reish Lakish tzvirele shadvarim amurim rakesh hanochash evis odam. Reish Lakish says it's talking about a case where a snake killed a person, which therefore is chayiv misa. About such a snake, Rabbi Eliezer said, you don't need to bring it to Bezdin. If an ox gores a person, you would have to bring the ox to Bezdin. You can't just kill it. So by the snake, Rabbi Eliezer holds, unlike the Tanakama, that you don't need to bring it to Bezdin. But if the snake did not kill anyone, then you're not allowed to just kill it. Rabbi Yochanan argues with Reish Lakish, and Rabbi Yochanan says, no, even if they didn't kill, you're allowed to kill, and you should kill the snake preemptively, because you can't domesticate a snake. So this is an argument in the Gemara. Now, when we look at Rashi, due to the fact that Rashi learns out the Tev Shebenochoshim Retzetzes Moiche from the rule of Kosher Shebemitzrim Hareg, the words of Rashi always have to be understood in the simple sense. What can we learn out from that? Aleph, you don't need Bezdin. Just like over there, not every Mitzri was judged individually. Then we would have had to rule with a proper mishpat and try to find the schus for him. Here, every Yored Var Hashem was killed out together with the rest of Mitzrayim. Apparently, it applies to all Mitzrim, in one measurement, in one big sweep. They were all wiped out. So that teaches us that in this machlekes, because the harigas anochosh is derived from the harigas tev shebemitzrim, that tells us that you have to kill the nochosh even if it didn't kill. Beis harigas anochosh. That means that you don't have to bring it to Bezdin. I'm sorry. And Beis, we learn out from that harigas anochosh yafilu keshalei hemisu. That means even in the case where it didn't kill anyone, because even the best nochosh, meaning what's the best nochosh? One that didn't kill. Not due to the war, not because it killed someone, rather just to the fact that it has an animosity, it deserves to get killed. Gimel calls hurak v'negal nochosh all of yeshna gzeir v'evosh is bein chobein. But which animal gets this special din? A snake, about whom there is a stated animosity in its nature. Other animals, they might be domesticated, so there's no need to just say that they should be killed, just like that. What's the lesson that we can learn out from this? Chazal tell us that the nochosh is the Yetzer Hara. Sometimes the Yetzer Hara dresses itself with this garment of Yiras Shamayim. It appears to us like a toiv shebenachashim, a good Yetzer Hara, a good Nachash. Hutayin, he says like this. He wants to establish peace with the Yetzer Tov. Let's find middle ground. I'll let you learn Torah when it's the time to learn Torah. But in return, but at other times, you let me be the Yetzer Hara says. Let me go after my taivis when I'm eating and so on. Let me enjoy myself. Says Rab Shimon that the best snake, the snake that comes with this itztala of Yiras Shamayim to make peace, you got to crush its moyach. Also, you cannot make deals and peace deals with the Yetzer Hara. Because he's a snake, he's sly. May the clothes of the Nachash be whatever it may be. Its hatred is always fully there. The fact that he's ready to give up some things, go learn Torah right now. This is just his tricks. He knows that he can't just approach the Yid to do Avodah Zarah. So he tells him, do this, do this. As Chassidus teaches, the Rebbe said a different explanation. Asay kach doesn't mean do a little Avera and then do another little Avera. No, he said, Asay kach. He says, yeah, do that. That's good. He encourages the Yid in the Avodas Hashem to make him feel good. That mitzvah, you did that well. He wants to befriend him. And then slowly, he takes him off the derech. So there is this Yiras Shamayim, the Toiv Shebenachashim, but you have to realize it's still a Nachash. So you have to crush not this Roshai, the Moyach, the brain over here. This type of conniving and tricking, that you have to kill. Another point. The Pasuk in Tillim that the toil of your hands you should eat. So it's a known pshat in Chassidus that it means that when a person gets busy making panosa, it should be only a toil of his hands. But his head should always be filled exclusively with Torah. You have to break the brain of the Yetzer Hara, that our minds should be fully devoted, exclusively devoted to Torah and Kedusha. When the Yidden fulfill this Hera of Chazal, Bisman HaGolus, we will then merit the fulfillment of the promise that also the enemies will make peace with him. As the Yerushalmi says, that who is the Oivov? It is the Nochosh. That La'osiv Mashiach will come, also the Nochosh will be transformed. That it will make peace with the human being. The Eibusha should hope this should be the Kodev Mamash.